calling the Cold War era global powers exchange prisoners. It marked the conclusion of an intrinsic round of diplomatic efforts. Our next story tells you all about that.
The skies over Ankara bore witness to a scene straight out of a spy thriller. A geopolitical chess match played out on a Turkish tarmac with an unprecedented prisoner exchange echoing the Cold War era. Multiple countries engaged in a complex web of negotiations to liberate 20 captives held hostage to geopolitical tensions. While in US, it was President Joe Biden and his deputy Kamala Harris, in Moscow, a parallel scene unfolded as President Vladimir Putin welcomed his citizens with a sigh of relief.
It's absolutely convinced we can get it done. I meant what I said. Alliances make a difference. They stepped up, they took a chance for us. It mattered a lot.
Among the most notable figures released was Evan Gershkovich, a Wall Street Journal correspondent whose detention had become a rallying cry for press freedom advocates worldwide. Alongside him, Paul Whelan, a Michigan-based corporate security executive long considered a pawn in geopolitical machinations, also tasted freedom after years in captivity.
Phone calls, everything that you've done with my family, it means a lot. So,
how do you feel?
I feel great. It's a long time coming.
Yeah.
So I'm glad to be back.
Among the released were several high-profile Russian opposition figures and 5 German nationals held in Russia and Belarus. Vadim Krasikov, a Russian citizen imprisoned in Germany for the assassination of a former Chechen rebel commander, was also part of the exchange. This intricate exchange, orchestrated through clandestine channels, marks a significant milestone in post-Soviet relations between the United States and Russia. The deal also laid bare the harsh realities of a world divided by mistrust and geopolitical rivalry. Bureau Report, WION World is One.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you.
All right, for more on this, we are now being joined by retired Colonel Heino Klink, former Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for East Asia. He's joining us live from Washington, D.C. Welcome to WION. Thank you so much for joining us. You have held senior political and military roles at the Pentagon and beyond, and multiple diplomatic postings as well. Can you share how these intense negotiations generally work, which led to the release of these prisoners?
Well, thank you very much for having me. Generally speaking, these types of sensitive negotiations occur significantly under the radar, meaning in a non-public sphere. What obviously makes this negotiation even more sensitive is that it involved a variety of countries, several U.S. allies in Europe, and of course Russia and its vassal state, Belarus. So I'm sure that this is a result of months and months of back-channel negotiations, as well as direct government-to-government, Washington to Moscow negotiations that were, of course, complemented by the United States involving partner countries as they were holding some of the Russian detainees.
And are there any potential long-term implications for this prisoner swap for U.S.-Russia relations? And could it set a precedent for possibly future diplomatic negotiations between the two countries?
Well, what we have to remember is that despite whatever tension there may be in bilateral, multilateral relations, diplomacy is a daily job that continues. So despite the fact that U.S.-Russian relations at a relatively low point based on the Russian invasion of Ukraine and other activities, diplomacy still occurs. We still have embassies in each other's capitals, and conversations occur. That being said, my concern is that hostage taking civilians prisoner by rogue regimes such as Moscow or Tehran and others has become an industry, if you will. The Russians have, over the last several years, taken innocent Americans and detained them and convicted them in kangaroo courts for the express purpose, in my opinion, of utilizing them as negotiating pawns. I'm very happy as an American that these Americans have come home. I'm also happy that Russian dissidents who've been locked up in Russian jails have been released as well as some German citizens. But my concern is that despite the fact that we've had a positive outcome now, that this may serve to, in the long run, not curb at all this trend of imprisoning innocents for use as coercive tools later.
Yeah, I'm so glad you brought that up. That was my next question, and also concerns about the prisoners that Russia swapped compared to those here in the United States. Can you talk about that a little bit? And ultimately, was this a legacy building endeavor for the Biden-Harris administration in an election year?
Well, to your first point, if you examine the background of the American and German and Russians that were released out of Russian and Belarusian prisons, they were in essence civilians, some journalists, some private citizens, and I think objectively they were arrested on trumped up charges and then again convicted in a kangaroo court. On the other hand, the Russians that were released from Western prisons included a convicted murderer, a Russian FSB, which is the successor organization to the KGB, colonel who was implicated and convicted in a German court of assassinating a Chechen in the capital of Germany, in Berlin, no less. So it was definitely a different caliber, if you will, of prisoners. On the Western side, you had normal civilians that were arrested. From the Russian side, it was agents of the Russian government and intelligence services. To your second question, I think the Biden administration should, in fact, be commended for negotiating this deal and getting the release of these Americans and others. It's a long time coming. WION had been wrongfully imprisoned for, I think, about 8 years now. And again, the absolute top priority of the American government should always be to protect its citizens. All that being said, the vice president's presence on the tarmac at Andrews Air Force Base when these American hostages came home certainly can be seen through a political lens. Arguably, the Biden administration has had a checkered, and I'm being, I think, perhaps overly generous here, has had a checkered track record in international accomplishments. So I think this might be utilized to reframe her in a more positive light.
Very interesting. And at least from what we know so far, there wasn't an airplane full of cash sent to Russia regarding this swap. Thank you so much, Colonel, for joining us on WION. I look forward to speaking to you again very soon.
Thank you.
For all the latest news, download the WION app and subscribe to our YouTube channel.